Here was Classic DM, and let's going to continue our conversation about house rules. Let's talk about some more melee fighting and spell casting today. So our little nasty tavern brawl situation in support of our Rise of Aya's Greyhawk campaign that we're doing. All right, let's just jump right into it. So let's talk right away about situations like this, okay? I'm gonna turn down the fighting sounds in the background, hoping they're not too loud. So you're in a combat situation, you're in a bar, and these baddies come up, and one of them's got a crossbow, and one of them starts winding up a spell, right? So this girl starts winding up a spell. Here's your cleric, here's your caster girl, and here's your little buddy assassin, and it's your turn, right? So you're playing Liz Fannin here, which is this little elf caster, she's a little tall, and it's your chance to do something. And let's say you're higher level, you got lots of spells to choose from. What spell are you going to cast? What spell is she casting? Well, let's say it's in your initiative. It's your turn to cast a spell. And in fact, let's even make it more complicated. Let's say that you wanted to do something to buff your ally. Yay, you're helpful. So you say to yourself, I'm looking at my spell list here. I want to cast a spell that's going to help my friend. I'm going to cast Strength, right? So how does it work? Well, if you look at the original AD&D book, all the spellcasting spells have a cast time. They also have like components and things like that. And all of them pretty much appear just like this. Let's just highlight Strength for you right here. You can see, whoops, it highlights the whole page. Let's just highlight this right here. Okay, let's just highlight that. That's what we're talking about. So, it says the level of the spell, and it says the range is touch, so she'd have to touch someone. Well, that's not a problem. She could just cast a spell and turn around and touch her little buddy here. What's his name again? Where is he at? Here he is. It's Seamus Shevlin, the Embalmer. Boy, what a guy. So she's going to help our little gnome assassin do by casting Strength on him. So he'll hit really hard once he actually gets over there and gets involved in a fight and does a backstab. So how's that going to work out? Boy, what a helpful young lass she is, right? But she's level 1. She doesn't have that spell. But this is how it would work. If she were able to cast a spell, it could boost the strength of the thief. Or in this case, it's a subclass of the thief. But can she get it off in time during her turn? Remember our last video, we talked about how we compress the melee round down to 6 seconds. We also talked about how far can you really move when you're engaged and unengaged, or actively defending or unengaged when you're moving. So in this situation, she's ready to do her thing. She wants to cast a spell. Can she pull it off? Well, since we changed time for melee and movement, we also need to change all the time numbers for spell casting. And this is where things get really tricky, because the spells in the original version of AD&D are extremely dramatic and very long and drawn out, and have kind of crazy spell components and strange situations you have to be in and all this kind of stuff, because they're very, very, very powerful. Casters or magic users, illusionists, which are or cleric or whatever else you got, a druid, all their spells are considered to be like incredibly powerful, right? So if you're playing 3rd edition and Pathfinder or whatever you're playing, spells are more like utilities. You drop the bomb like a World of Warcraft game and just bam, blow something up. Even if you're playing Baldur's Gate, it's your turn, you cast a spell, it goes off. So my rules kind of favor the little video game side of things, because I want the action to happen a little faster. If you were to try to cast Strength in this situation, it would take 1 turn. That is 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, you're going to be dead. This is probably not the time or place to cast Strength. In fact, imagine you wanted to cast Strength at work today, right? You're at the office, or you're at school, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, right? You're at the UFC fight, you're at the university, you're at the school, you're at your office, and you're like, hey man, stand right there for a few minutes because I want to cast a Strength spell on you. It's just going to take 10 minutes, right? You can listen to 2112 in 10 minutes, so that's really, really a long time. It's kind of ridiculous. But in the original version of AD&D, like I said, it's coming from a it's coming from a wargaming kind of mentality. The time is really stretched out. Their philosophy was it's unmanageable to have time that's compressed. Well, as you saw over the years, what happened? Time became manageable and people wanted more instant action like in film. So melee rounds went down to 6 seconds. I'm sorry, that's what happened. So 40 some odd years later, we should do the same thing in our game, and that's what I do at my table. So in this situation, any spell that doesn't have some crazy resurrecting Red Sonja type thing from the Conan movie, anything that's not like a resurrection spell or a big summoning of a gate for a demon to come through, it's just a basic spell like this, a level 2 strength buff spell. You can do it in 1 round. Remember, 1 round for us is 1 segment. So at the beginning of her turn, just like in Divinity: The Original Sin or anything else, she can start the spell and deliver it, and that will be her complete turn. She can deliver it to this guy here. He's in touch range. Anyone in these adjacent squares would be considered touch range for her. Now, you can't really see it with this kind of third-person camera, but let's say she wanted to put the... okay, so we can put everyone that's applicable to get the strength spell at the end of her turn is in this adjacent series of 9 squares. In fact, we'll pull up some of our kids from the other, either standing on the table. You can do the strength spell and touch their toes, right? So, excuse me, anyone around this tic-tac-toe square, anyone around her, we'll move that back just a touch so you can see. Anyone around her could get the strength spell. So she could turn around and give it to the dwarf fighter in front of her, or she could turn around in place and give it to the illusionist. Oh, that wouldn't be a good idea. She could give it to the cleric, kind of a waste. Give it to the druid, or she can give it to the monk. That'd be very useful. But anyone that's in close proximity from a miniature's perspective is considered to be in touch range at my table. Right? So the problem is the time element. In this situation, she wants to turn over and touch Seamus, Seamus Shovelin the Embalmer and give him a strength buff. Well, I wouldn't do that tactically, but say this person really wants to be a helping type of a player. They really want to help everyone. Let's make sure everyone else is empowered to be awesome because I don't want to die, right? So you cast a spell. It says one turn. So anything that's long like that reasonably could be done, by doing some incantations or waving your hands in the air and pull the spell component out of your pouch and rub a bat leg together or whatever else you got to do, because this has VSM. You see this VSM component up here? I let you do it in one melee round. When your turn comes up, not 10 turns later when the fight's over, that's when you get to cast a spell. Now, if you ever played Neverwinter Nights 1, Neverwinter Nights 2, Baldur's Gate, Icewind Dale, maybe some of the console versions of Temple of Elemental Evil, if you play World of Warcraft or Black Desert Online or even Ultima Online, no one has any spell casting in the modern world since 1995 or greater. Even Wizardry or Curse of the Azor Bonds has spells where you're standing around for 10 minutes to cast a strength spell on someone or bark skin. So, we're making it more fun. We're compressing the time. We compress the time for the melee and the movement, so it's just as fair to compress the time for the caster. So in this situation, any spell like that, we're going to compress it down to one round, so she can deliver the strength spell in her turn. No problem. Now let's talk about some other situations. Another spell would be interesting to take a look at is one that doesn't really say longer than a round. It just talks about it in terms of segments. Let's take a look at the infamous Fireball spell. Everyone loves Fireball. Let's say she wanted to say, well, it's my turn. I want to cast Fireball, and I want to center it in the same thing here, and she's figured out the radius, one of the biggest problems people have because there's friendly fire, and she decides to focus the Fireball on the top of this table and go boom and burn everyone. Can she deliver that in her round during her turn, or does it get delivered at the end of the next round? Now, in AD&D, it's really kind of complicated because they say it only takes 3 segments to cast it. Now remember, in the original version of AD&D, it was a round, which is 10 segments. So when Gygax and Arnis and everyone wrote this, they were basically saying, in a full melee round where guys are blocking and parrying and jockeying for position and other people are moving 120 feet, right? And you're getting ready to wind up this spell, it's only going to take you 18 seconds to get this spell off, which is 3 6-second segments. So what does that really tell you? So if you compress everything down to 1 minute equals 6 seconds, you could say it's 1/10 of this 3 segments, which would be 1.8 seconds. So in my mind, she could wind up the Fireball, point, change targets, pick the location, and drop it. So all those actions in one fell swoop. It's almost like you're playing Divinity Original Sin. She winds the spells up, she holds it, she can point with her finger or dagger, and then she can say, I've got the spell, I'm about to deliver it. I got about 2 seconds to deliver it, so I'm going to deliver it here. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4. It seems like I can, because you're not really there. You're playing a miniature, so it's okay to take a second or two and figure out where your chess move is going to happen. I want to drop that Fireball about right here, because I think it's going to hit everyone in this radius. And then you got to read the radius of the effect and learn all that stuff. The range is different, how far you can cast it all based on your level and all that kind of business. So, in summary, if it says any kind of length of a spell that says a segment in any way, shape, or form, in fact, even Feign Death has a segment description. It's up here, a page up, right? Strength, where's Feign Death? Here, let's forget, Feel Fool's Gold. Oh, it's around here somewhere. I know I seen it just the other day. Is it on the same page as Fireball? Maybe it is. Yeah, here it is. It's on the same page as Fireball. Feign Death. Here's another example. You're going to drop dead like a hunter or a monk in EverQuest. You're going to feign death. You're going to pretend you're dead. You're magically faking that you're falling down dead. How long does it take to do it? 1 segment. Okay? So, if a round is 60 seconds, a segment is 6 seconds. If we compress our round down to 6 seconds, it's 1/10 of this. So you could feign death in our table in 1/10 of a second. So that means like the moment someone rushed up to attack you, you could cast a spell and go bam, just say the word. Even the description of it says V and S. V, S, and M. Let's go back to Fireball up here. It's a V and S spell. How about strength? V, S, and M. These components are really tricky in AD&D, but they're really cool. They have a lot of neat elements to it, but some of them are very hard to get. Verbal V means verbal. That means you're saying magic words. If you ever played Ultima Online, it's like saying corpore. You're saying a magical word. You play World of Warcraft, they don't say anything, right? They just like wind their hands around and the spell goes off. S is somatic. Somatic means you're moving your hands around. It's like incantations. So you see characters in World of Warcraft, and you see characters even in Baldur's Gate. In Baldur's Gate, they verbalize and they do somatic components. They play an animation so you can see what's happening. So you're turning your hands up and down. You're not doing backflips or any kind of jazzercise, but you're doing little things with your hands, and that's the somatic component. M is material component. This is where really hardcore AD&D players get tripped up. You have a situation where you're playing Magic, you're level 7, you have 17 hit points, you can't find the components to cast any of your spells, and you didn't learn any of them, and you can't memorize them, and you're running around with just web, and that's what you're doing for your adventure in the Tomb of Horrors. Not fun. So in this situation, the material component is kind of a flavor thing. I don't want to get off on a tangent on spell learning. I'm going to do that in a separate video. So let's go back to the time compression element here. So in this situation, any spell that's not some long, drawn-out, ceremonial-style spell, and you use your judgment on that, if it's a gate, right, or it's resurrection, or something along those lines, summon animal or whatever, you might make it take 1 or 2 rounds or 10 minutes or whatever you want to do. There's no reason to make it take, I think resurrection takes a day or something. I can't remember exactly. But something that's just a buff or a nuking spell, and it's your turn to play and your chance to do something, you can just let it go in one round, which is 6 seconds. So the verbal, somatic, and material component is important because if someone casts silence 15-foot radius on you and the spell has a verbal component, it doesn't work. So let's go back to the situation here. Let's say that the situation happened where shot the crossbow, hit the cleric cast a heal on herself. Assassin tried to hide in shadows, but he didn't successfully do it. He decides on his next turn he's going to rush up and attack her. He'll get in range, but he hasn't got a chance to go yet. She's getting ready to wind up a spell. You know she's going to because she just tried to cast Hold Person on the assassin or whatever. Let's say she tried to cast Web and everyone resisted, right? So it's your turn. You're like, you know what? I'm going to have to do something. I'm going to have to cast a spell and do something to this person. Let me cast Silent 15-foot radius centered on her head, right? That's a really good viable spell. It will silence her. So if you were playing this girl right here, if you're playing Liz Finan and you want to cast Silence 15-foot radius, which is a really good thing to do in all the Baldur's Gate games if you ever get a chance to do it, that and Hold Person are like death mode, and you want to cast Silence 15-foot radius, anyone in that area isn't going to be able to cast any spells that have a verbal component. So what does that mean she couldn't cast? She couldn't cast Fireball, right? She couldn't cast Strength. She couldn't cast Feign Death. She couldn't cast Fly. She couldn't cast Flame Arrow. She couldn't cast Dispel Magic. She couldn't cast Dispel Magic to get rid of it. There's all kinds of things. Could she cast Web? Nope. She couldn't cast Web. So could she cast Blink? Nope. You can't even cast that. So a lot of the spells have verbal components, which is like saying magic words out loud. So you might find that it's one of the most nastiest things you can do to another caster is anchor a silence 15-foot radius around someone and cast it when you need to cast it, so that person's plan of getting in position to wind up the spell and getting ready to do something gets shut down. And usually what that means that caster will do is they will move out of the silence away from the party. So you're going to have a situation instead of a chance to do something, they're going to move away because they don't want to be silenced anymore. Now there's saving throws and all kinds of details to deal with that. But in that situation, in fact, let's see if we can find, I hate to do this while we're on the fly here, but let's see if we can type in silence in here and see if we can find it real quickly. It may take me a little bit longer to find it than normal. No, don't search the whole document. There it is, silence 15-foot radius. You got to figure out the range. In this situation, they say it's 12 inches, which we know is really a lot further than that. Upon casting a spell, complete silence prevails in the area of effect. All sound is stopped, so all conversations possible. Spells cannot be cast, and no noise whatsoever issues forth. The spell can be cast into the air or upon an object. In this case, you can cast on top of her head. The spell of silence lasts for 2 rounds, or in this case, it would be about 12 seconds. For each level, so if you're like a level 1, casting it would be 2 rounds of duration. There's no saving throw. The casting time says 5 segments. So if you were playing D&D in the original rules, that 5 segments, not a full round, right? It's not even half of a. It is half a round, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. It's and there's 10 segments in a round, so it only takes half a round to get that spell off. So you can do it really quickly. That's a really, really powerful spell that you could do. So you could shut this caster down really, really quick with silence 15-foot radius. So let's tip our summary board out and show you what that looks like. This is how we break down time for our casting in the game. let's switch back to this overhead camera real quick. And we'll pull this out of the way and move these kids over here. And we'll just throw this down into our little summary piece here with chicken scratch writing. So, house rules. 1 round is 6 seconds. There's 2 types of movement. Unengaged, which is free movement, and then engaged, which is like actively defending or actively attacking. So, but what about spells? Okay, the cast time is a round versus the segment. So, if the fireball spell is a 3 segments casting time, you can still deliver it 1 round. Strength spell takes 1 turn, and don't care, you can still do it in 1 round. If you have something like Feign Death, it takes 1 segment. That's an instantaneous spell. You could do it right in the face of someone before they can even take a swing to interrupt you. Now, the only thing that's not really written on this board is if we have a spell that's a really, really long, drawn out spell like Gate or something, or Resurrection, you're going to need to read the description of the spell, and as a dungeon master kind of say, well, this is a really complicated spell, it takes a long time, it's like a ritual, I'm going to make you take this much time to do it. I'll make you take an hour to do it, or 2 hours, or 6 days of prayer, and then you're going to cast it. Whatever you feel is role-playing kind of fantasy game appropriate, just based upon what you've read in books and seen in films and stuff like that. All right, so we're going to leave it at that today. That's what we're going to talk about. That's what we wanted to cover today about spells in relation to our movement and time compression. The next thing we'll probably talk about is how do you learn the spells, because the way I do it is very, very different, much more fun, I think, than the original rules have it. And we're not doing this to like debunk the original rules. All these rule changes are just to make it more fun and more immediate in a modern world. All right, hope you had fun, and we'll talk to you next time.